Gods of our land! Gods of our land, hear me! I cannot believe it. My twin boys taken from me again. Why? Why am I the only woman in Igbala who keeps giving birth to forbidden children? Help me take this shame away from me. I have given birth to twins 3 times. And 3 times they have all been taken away from me. Help me! Remove this evil spirit from me and make me clean.
To understand why a woman as gentle as Tinuade would one day scream at the gods themselves, we have to go back. Back to a time before the river ever took anything from her. Back to when she was simply the most beautiful, most humble maiden in the ancient village of Igbala, a name that in the old tongue means salvation. And for years, salvation was the one thing that village refused to give its own daughters. If you're new here, welcome to True Tales by Efe, where we tell African stories that shake you, shape you, and refuse to let you stay the same. Hit subscribe and turn on that notification bell right now. Long before the river took anything from her, Tinuade was the pride of her family. She was the first child of Baba Akumbi, a respected farmer who worked some of the richest soil in Igbala, and Mama Gbemi, a woman known for her sharp tongue and her even sharper cooking. Tinuade had 3 younger siblings who adored the ground she walked on, but it wasn't only her family who loved her. The whole village spoke well of Tinuade. She had skin like polished mahogany and a smile that made tired elders forget their aching backs, yes, but it was never her beauty that made her name a blessing on every tongue in Igbala. It was her humility. She bowed to every elder she passed. She fetched water for widows who never even had to ask. She never once raised her voice, not even when her cousins teased her for being too soft for her own good. That girl, the market women loved to say, will make a good wife for a king. They were not far from the truth, because not far from Tinuade's compound, in the largest household in Igbala, the high chief, Chief Adelabu, had a son, and that son had loved her for years. Ola was Chief Adelabu's only child, and every unmarried maiden in Igbala dreamed of becoming his wife one day. But Ola only ever had eyes for one woman. Long before either of them dared speak of marriage, Ola would wake before the rooster, before the sky had even stretched itself open, just to meet Tinuade at the stream where her and her mother fetched water each morning. He would lift her clay pot onto her head without being asked, and she would pretend to complain that he was only slowing her down, and they would both laugh in a way that said everything neither of them was brave enough to say out loud yet. By day, they worked the farm side by side, Ola pretending he needed help clearing weeds he could have cleared with his eyes closed just to steal a few more hours near her. By night, long after the cooking fires had burned low, they sat outside her father's compound and talked about everything and about nothing until Mama Gbemi came out swinging a broom and laughing as she chased Ola home. The village noticed. Of course the village noticed. Look at those two, the elders whispered, shaking their heads and smiling anyway. Even a blind man could see that love. So, when Chief Adelabu himself walked to Baba Okumbi's compound to beg, humbly as though he were not the highest man in the land, for Tinuade's hand on Ola's behalf, no one in Igbala was surprised, least of all Tinuade, who did not need a single moment to think about her answer. Yes, she said, before her father had even finished repeating the chief's formal words. Yes, I will marry Ola. The wedding drums played for 3 full days. Igbala had not seen a celebration like it in years. When Ola and Tinuade finally stood before the elders as husband and wife, even Chief Adelabu wept because for once, a marriage inside his own family had been built on something stronger than land or politics. It had been built on love. Nobody standing in that celebrating crowd could have imagined what was coming for the young bride they all seemed so proud of. A few months into the marriage, Tinuade discovered she was carrying a child. When she told Ola, he lifted her clean off his feet and spun her around the compound until Mama Gbemi came out shouting at him to be careful with her daughter. Ola told everyone. He told the farmhands. He told the goats. He would have told the palm trees themselves if he thought for even a moment that they were listening. Tinuade did everything right. She rested when her body asked her to rest. She ate what the elders instructed. In the quiet evenings, her hands trembling with happiness she still couldn't believe was hers, she sewed a tiny wrapper for the child she had not yet met. And every week without fail, she visited Iya Omoayo, the sharp-eyed old midwife who had delivered nearly every single child born in Igbala for 30 years. "Your belly is growing faster than it should, you know," Iya Omoayo said one afternoon, pressing her weathered hands gently against Tinuade's stomach, her brows knitting together in a way Tinuade had never seen before. "Is that a bad thing?" Tinuade asked, laughing nervously to hide the sudden knot forming in her chest. Iya Omoayo did not laugh back. The weeks that followed felt heavier with every sunrise. The closer Tinuade came to her delivery date, the more silent the old midwife became, until finally, just weeks before she was due, Iya Omoayo spoke the words she clearly had been avoiding for too long. "Tinuade, my daughter," she said slowly, refusing to meet her eyes, "I believe you may be carrying more than one child." For a moment, Tinuade could not speak. She could not even blink. Her heart began hammering so violently inside her chest that she was certain the old woman could hear it. "You mean twins?" Iya Omoayo only nodded, and something like fear flickered across her tired face. "Say nothing of this to anyone," she warned, gripping Tinuade's hands tightly in her own. "Pray my old eyes are wrong, my child. Pray hard." But some prayers, no matter how desperately whispered into the dark, are never answered the way we beg them to be. That night, Tinuade told Ola everything, and she watched the color drain slowly out of her husband's face as he paced their small room until the floor nearly wore thin beneath his feet. "Twins?" he kept repeating, as though saying it enough times could somehow change what the word meant. "Twins, Tinuade." Neither of them slept. The next morning, Tinuade walked to her mother's compound, hoping, praying that Mama Igbemi would tell her it was nothing at all to fear. Instead, when she finished speaking, her mother gasped so sharply she nearly choked on her own breath, her eyes widening with something she had never once seen in them: terror. "Oh, my child," Mama Igbemi whispered, pulling her daughter into the shadow of the compound wall, as though the wall itself might be listening. "Do you not know what this means? It is forbidden in this land to give birth to more than one child at a time. Twins are considered an abomination, unclean, a curse laid upon the whole family that carries them. Are you certain? Are you sure Iya Omoayo knows what she saw?" Tinuade had grown up hearing whispers of this old law, the way children hear whispers of things they never expect to touch their own lives. She knew vaguely the story passed down from her grandmother's grandmother of a terrible famine that had once starved Igbala for 3 long years. A famine the diviners of that generation had blamed entirely on a single woman who dared to give birth to 2 children at once. From that day forward, the law had never once been questioned by anyone. 2 souls born from one womb, the elders believed, were not a blessing from the gods. They were a warning that the very land itself had been offended. "It is only an old fear," Tinuade said, though her voice betrayed her, shaking around every word. "It cannot still be true today." But fear, once it has rooted itself deep enough into a village's soil, rarely disappears simply because the world around it has quietly changed. The weeks that followed felt like walking barefoot along the edge of a blade. Then at last, the day came. Inside the delivery hut, the air sat thick with heat and dread. Iya Omoayo knelt before Tinuade, Mama Igbemi held tightly to her daughter's hand, and Ola paced helplessly just outside the entrance, forbidden by tradition from stepping foot inside. "Push, Tinuade, push!" Iya Omoayo commanded. Tinuade screamed with every last bit of strength her body had left. Then finally, a cry filled the small hut, a baby's cry. Mama Igbemi wept with relief, already reaching for her first grandchild. But Iya Omoayo's hands did not stop moving. "Tinuade," the old midwife said, her voice suddenly tight with dread, There is another. Push again, my child. Push. Everyone in that hut went completely still. Tinuade screamed again, and moments later, a second cry rang out, small, fragile, and unmistakable. What should have been the happiest moment of Tinuade's entire life cuddled instantly into something else. Mama Gbemi's joyful tears turned to tears of dread mid-breath. Ola, hearing that second cry from just outside the entrance, went completely rigid, as though the ground itself had opened beneath his feet. Word tore through Igbala faster than fire through dry harmattan grass. By the time the sun had fully risen, 5 men sent from the chief's compound, led by Baba Fasina, the eldest and most feared priest in the land, arrived at the delivery hut. You already know what must be done, Baba Fasina said, not unkindly, but not gently either. It is the law of our ancestors. It has always been the law. Tinuade was never permitted to hold her sons again. She was never permitted to name them. That same midnight, the men carried the 2 crying infants down to the river, along with every personal belonging that had touched Tinuade throughout her pregnancy, the little wrapper she had sewn with trembling, hopeful hands, her sleeping mat, even the beads from her wrists, so that whatever evil the elders believed clung to her would have nothing left in this world to return to. And Tinuade was not permitted to weep, not a single tear. Tradition demanded she undergo spiritual cleansing before the next dawn and rise from it as though nothing at all had happened, as though she had just become a mother and lost everything in the exact same breath. Months passed. Slowly, painfully, Tinuade returned to something that resembled a life. Then she discovered she was pregnant again. This time, there was no spinning her around the compound, only quiet hope sitting uneasily beside quiet fear in the very same heart. Maybe this time, Ola whispered one night, his hand resting gently over her belly, it will only be one. It was not only one. When Tinuade gave birth to her second set of twins, the same ritual unfolded exactly as before. The same men, the same river, the same forbidden tears. But this time, something changed in the way the village looked at her. Where Tinuade had once been the maiden every mother pointed to as an example, she became something else entirely, something whispered about behind cupped hands in the marketplace. There she is, a trader murmured to her friend as Tinuade walked past. Twice now, another woman replied, not even bothering to lower her voice. What kind of spirit follows a woman like that? Children who once ran to greet her now ran the other way. Women who once called her beautiful Tinuade now called her the cursed one whenever they thought she couldn't hear, and sometimes even when they knew perfectly well that she could. Before we continue, I want to ask you something, and I really want you to answer me honestly in the comments. Have you ever been blamed by the people around you, even your own family, for something completely out of your control? Tell me your story below. I promise you, I read every single one. The whispers eventually reached Chief Adelebu's compound, as whispers always eventually do. One evening, a small group of elders came to speak with Ola alone without Tinuade present. They sat him beneath the old Iroko tree at the center of the compound, and one of them, a wrinkled elder named Baba Ige, cleared his throat. Baba Ige, my son, no one blames you for the misfortune that follows your wife, but you are the only son of the chief. It is perhaps time to take a second wife, one who can give you children the land will accept. Ola did not answer right away. He looked slowly at each elder seated in that circle, one by one, and when he finally spoke, his voice was steadier than even he expected it to be. I did not marry Tinuade for children the land will accept. I married her because I love her. If the land cannot accept what she gives it, then perhaps it is the land's heart that is too small, not my wife's womb that is cursed. A heavy silence fell beneath that Iroko tree. Even Chief Adelebu, who had upheld the customs of his ancestors his entire life without question, found himself unable to meet his own son's eyes because deep down, in a place he rarely allowed himself to visit, the chief had already begun to wonder the very same thing in his own heart. But wondering and acting were two different things, and Chief Adilibu was not yet ready to act. Years passed this way. Tinuade carried the weight of the village's cruelty the same way she carried everything else in her life, quietly and with a strength no one around her seemed to notice or care to notice. Then she became pregnant a third time. By now, Tinuade already knew deep in her bones, long before Iyalmayo needed to examine her, that history was about to repeat itself. And when her delivery day finally arrived, it did exactly that. 2 boys, healthy, loud, and beautiful, were born into a world that had already decided long before they took their first breath that it did not want them. That same night, Baba Fasina and his men came again. The same river welcomed 2 more of Tinuade's children into its endless silence. This is the very moment we met Tinuade at the beginning of this story, on her knees at the water's edge, her voice tearing through the darkness of Igbala. "Gods of our land, I cannot believe my twin boys have been taken away from me again. Why am I the only woman giving birth to the forbidden children? Help me take this shame away from me. I have given birth to twins 3 times and they have all been taken away from me. Help me remove this evil spirit from me and make me clean." Only silence answered her. The river gave no reply. The gods, if they were even listening at all, said nothing back. For the first time in her life, Tinuade did not simply grieve, she broke. 2 lights were born from a single flame. The village gave them a cursed name. The river keeps what fear demands, but a mother's love still lights the land. A old song, one Mama Gbemi used to hum without thinking, drifted through Tinuade's mind that night, though she could no longer tell if it offered her any comfort at all. In the weeks that followed, Tinuade barely spoke. She stopped going to the market. She stopped walking to the stream where she and Ola had first fallen in love. Some nights, Ola would find her simply sitting alone in the dark, staring at nothing, and he would sit beside her without a single word, because by now he had learnt that some pain does not need fixing, it only needs company. It was Mama Gbemi, of all people, who finally found the words to reach her daughter. "Tinuade," she said one morning, cradling her daughter's face in her own worn hands, "I do not know why this has happened to you 3 times over. I do not have the wisdom of the diviners, and I no longer fully trust that they ever truly had it either. But I know this. No evil spirit gave birth to your sons. Only love did. Whatever the elders believe, your body has done nothing but exactly what the gods designed it to do." Tinuade wept then, for the first time allowing herself to weep freely, without shame, without an audience demanding that she stop. "Then why," she asked quietly, "does it keep happening to me?" Mama Gbemi had no answer that day, but far beyond the borders of Igbala, an answer was already making its slow way toward them, carried not by diviners and not by gods, but by strangers walking a long, dusty road. It began as rumor, the way most change quietly does. Traders passing through Igbala spoke of villages many days' journey away, where missionaries and government officials had begun traveling from town to town, carrying a message the elders of those distant villages had never once heard spoken so boldly before. They say one trader whispered in the market that in some villages now, the killing of twins is being abolished. They are calling it murder, not tradition. The word spread through Igbala like wildfire through dry grass. Some villagers scoffed. Others grew afraid, unsure what to believe anymore, and Baba Fasina, the old priest who had personally led the men to the river 3 separate times for Tinuade's sons alone, grew furious. Strangers cannot walk into our land and erase what our ancestors have known for generations, he thundered before a gathering in the village square. The famine will return. The gods will punish every single one of us for this foolishness. But Chief Adelabu, watching in silence from the edge of that same gathering, found himself thinking again of his son's words beneath the Iroko tree. He thought too of Tinuade's face, hollowed out by a grief she had never once been allowed to express out loud. And for the first time in his entire life as chief, he did not simply nod along with Baba Fasina. Perhaps, Chief Adelabu said slowly, silencing the murmuring crowd around him, it is not foolishness to finally ask why our land has never once been tested by allowing a single set of twins to live. Perhaps our fear has simply never once found out to let it find out. If you believe no mother should ever be punished for how her children choose to arrive into this world, drop a like on this video for Tinuade right now and type the words "no more" in the comments if you are hoping right along with her for what happens next. Months later, it was no longer only rumor. The missionaries arrived in Igbala themselves alongside officers of the new government and stood before the entire village in the very same square where Baba Fasina had once thundered his warnings. This time, what they carried was not a warning, it was a decree. From this day forward, the government officer announced, his words repeated with a translator standing beside him. The killing of twins in this village and in every village under this authority is strictly forbidden. Any man who carries out this act will be punished as a murderer under the law. A heavy silence fell over Igbala, the kind of silence that arrives right before a village exhales after holding its breath for generations without realizing it. Tinuade heard the news standing outside her own compound, Ola's hand wrapped tightly around hers. She did not cheer. She did not celebrate. She simply closed her eyes and allowed herself for the very first time in years to imagine a version of motherhood that did not end at a riverbank. By then, she was already carrying her fourth child. 6 babies had already been taken from her by that point. 6 times her arms had been emptied in the name of a law she never once chose to live under. Every single day of that pregnancy, fear and hope sat together inside her, the same way they always had. But this time, hope had something new standing beside it, a law, written down, backed by men who now held the power to enforce it. A few weeks later, Tinuade went into labor one final time. Iya Umuayo, older now, her hands a little less steady, but her heart every bit as devoted, knelt before her once more. "Push, Tinuade, push!" A single cry rang out through the hut, and only one. Iyaumuayo waited, her own breath caught somewhere in her throat, out of nothing but old habits, old fear. But no second cry ever came. Just one healthy, beautiful baby girl crying loudly enough to fill the entire compound. Tinuade wept, and this time not a single soul told her to stop. Ola wept too, kneeling beside her, holding their daughter as though she were the only child that had ever existed in the whole world, because in that exact moment, she was the only child that mattered. "We will call her Ifeoluwa," she whispered, cradling her daughter close against her chest. "God's love." Because after everything this land had taken from her, it was the only name that made any sense at all. Ifeoluwa grew up surrounded by more love than her own mother had ever dared to hope for. She never once knew a version of Igbala where the river was something to be feared. She grew up hearing her mother's story, not as a secret whispered in shame, but as a testimony spoken with quiet, unshakable pride. Years later, Ifeoluwa herself fell in love, married, and in a twist the entire village of Igbala would talk about for years afterward, gave birth to twins. Not once, not twice, 3 times, exactly like her mother before her. But this time, the story that followed each birth looked nothing like Tinuade's. This time, when the second cry rang out beside the first, there was no panic inside the room. There were no men waiting outside to carry newborns down to the river in the dead of night. Instead, there were drums, there was dancing, there was Chief Adebola himself, far older now, arriving with gifts for each new set of twins, publicly declaring them a blessing upon his family and his village, as though trying, in whatever small way still left to him, to return what men like him had once so carelessly taken. Two lights were born from a single flame. Igbala sings a different name now. The river gives back what fear once banned, and a mother's love finally rules the land. Tinuade, a grandmother many times over now, would sit for hours holding her twin grandchildren, one cradled in each arm, rocking them slowly, while she told them again and again about a woman who once knelt at a riverbank and begged the gods to make her clean. She told them gently about the 6 brothers they would never meet, sons who had come into this world exactly as these children had, but who were never once given the chance to grow up beside them. I used to believe something evil lived inside me, Tinuade would tell her grandchildren, her voice steady now, the way only time and truth can finally make a voice steady. But it was never me this village needed cleansing from. It was fear, and fear, my children, was the only true curse that ever lived in Igbala. The gods of our land never once cursed Tinuade. They never asked for her sons. It was fear, dressed up carefully as tradition, that took them from her, generation after generation, until enough people finally found the courage to stand up and say, no more. Today, in villages across the land, twins are no longer feared. In many places, they are celebrated as the rarest kind of blessing a family could ever receive. But that blessing did not arrive easily, and it did not arrive accidentally. It was paid for by mothers like Tinuade, women whose names history rarely bothers to remember, but whose quiet pain rewrote an entire land law. If this story moved you even a little, I want to hear from you. Type Ifeoluwa in the comments if you believe love always finds its way back around, no matter how long it takes to arrive. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss the next one. We are True Tales by Ife. We bring raw and captivating stories. Until next time, keep peddling, keep building, keep rising. We'll see you in the next story.